Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Hometown Heroes. I'm Mike Kenichi, and tonight is part 2 of our interview with Derby running coaches Joe Mazzanti, Mike Gazzo, and Nick DeLugo. And guys, I want to thank you for coming on again. Part 1 was a lot of fun, and I know part 2 is just going to be great. Mike, I want to start with you. You know, in any sport, whether it be football, baseball, basketball, you know, Biddy League is crucial, Little League is crucial, Pop Warner is crucial for those sports, because without those kids having something to play at 9, 10, 11 years old, they really can't develop into good athletes when they get to high school. Derby never had that type of running program until you started that, and I want to say you started in, what, 2010?
I think 2010.
Right, so tell us how that came about. What made you decide to do a running program? I mean, was it just something to give the kids something to do after school every day?
Well, it was something to keep the kids involved in after cross-country season. So we started the running club. Myself, Shelly Sheridan, and Mr. Sabula got together and said, you know, we want to do something to keep the kids in touch with running throughout the winter time and even up until the summer. So we started running club, and the following month we had the kids go to their first 5K, and it was Gabby and her brother, and we had some other people. Charlie Sampson was running at that time.
Right.
And we go to this 5K in Bridgeport, and it was a small race, about 70 people. And afterwards at the awards ceremony, they were passing out like peanuts and candy and no trophies or medals or anything like that. But what we noticed about the kids is that they were winning things, and it didn't matter if Gabby had this big psychedelic lollipop she won. She was going to show everybody that she had, you know, she was the first place girls finisher, and she had the lollipop. And we're like, yeah, these guys like winning, so let's keep doing what we're doing. And we continued with the road race program.
Right. And first year, how many kids would you say went out? It wasn't a lot, but it was building each year, correct?
You know, about maybe 15.
Which is still pretty good for first year.
Wintertime, 15 is a good number.
Right.
To get them to get a kid to go out and run in the winter time when it's cold and they're uncomfortable, it takes a lot.
Right.
So yeah, maybe 15 the first year tops, but maybe even closer to 12.
Right.
I can't remember.
And I mean, you obviously enjoyed doing that. You're still doing it today. This is like probably your 7th or 8th year. How rewarding has that been for you, just on a personal level?
Well, personally, I just like seeing the progression of the kids.
Right.
As they get better. You know, we compare their 5Ks month by month by month, and it's like, geez, I got, you know, 30 seconds faster. Some of them, you know, get 2 minutes and 30 seconds faster, and that's big. And then we have, you know, someone like K-Rod who gets like 9 minutes faster, and it's like, you know.
You know, it's funny you brought up K-Rod, because I was going to ask you this. One of the things the kids really like about you, they've told me over the years, is you always give them a nickname of some sorts. Did you come up with the nickname K-Rod? Was that your doing?
I did.
You know, I remember a kid that you had as a student, you know, his last name was Link, and you would always call him the missing link, and you know, he enjoyed having you call him. What is that? Just your way of letting these kids know that, you know, not only am I your coach, but I'm also here to support you and to make you feel comfortable when you're here every day? Because I think when a kid knows they have like a nickname like that, it shows that you care about them and you're paying attention to them.
And it helps me remember their names, who they are.
Right.
Because like the missing link, I can tell you who he is, but I can't tell you his real name.
Right. Now, Joe, this broke my heart. It was, you know, I want to say it was like a June 12th, 1995, at the cross-country banquet. I said 95, correct? Mm-hmm. You had to announce that you were leaving the cross-country program. Your job just was becoming too difficult to continue on. We talked about it on the podcast, but again, just tell the people out there how hard that was for you to do.
It was very hard. By the way, good research. That was June 10th. That was very
June
close.
10th.
Yeah,
okay.
You almost had it to the day.
Right.
Yeah, it was tough. Now, I mean, it wasn't something that I just, did it at the last minute or,
You had
rashly
to give up track the year before, or that year actually. Right?
Yeah, right. Just before the
announced it.
announcement. Yeah.
Right.
The track of 95, the 95
Right.
season. It was something I had thought about for a while. Work was getting progressively tougher. And I was in a situation by that time, Mike, where I was just burned out. I had been coaching for 13 years.
You were also writing too, which people forget. You wrote for the Sentinel many years, and now you were doing the Post as well.
Right. I mean, there were days when the hours were just crazy. I mean, I'd be working 18 hours. I'd be sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night if I was lucky. And but yeah, nevertheless, it was tough because it was something that I had absolutely loved to do. And as I said to a lot of people, if that could have been a full-time job, I know that's what I would have done with my life. It was absolutely that important to me. But it was time, and so that night I had talked to Kenny Marcuscio.
He had told you, listen, just even if you could give 50%, that's all we want. But you just didn't think it would be fair to the kids, correct?
I did, yeah. It just wouldn't be right. And he said, well, it would still be more than a lot of people would give. I said, yeah, but I'll know the difference. And if it comes down to it, and there's something that I didn't do or should have done, and we lose because of that, or the program starts, losing because of that, I couldn't. That wasn't me. So I told him, he tried to sort of gently talk me out of it, but I said, no, it's time. And Matt Bradshaw had been my assistant for a couple of years. He had volunteered, and so I felt it was a good time. He was starting to get into teaching, and I figured it would be a good time to pass the baton and let him take over. But it was, that night, Mike, was tough. We had the banquet. We did all the things that we usually do at the banquet, and then at the very end is when I made the announcement.
Right, and nobody saw it coming. I mean, you look back now, years later, and we should have saw it because, again, you didn't coach track that year.
That should have been a giveaway to people. I'm surprised people didn't pick up on that.
Right, but I remember, it was just like an eerie feeling the next day. Like, even, most of the kids that had ran for you for 4 years, they were graduating, but even they were sad because they didn't want to see you leave, even though they were leaving, so it was definitely a difficult thing. And, one thing I want to mention too is we kind of forgot about him a little bit, but Matt Bradshaw, you mentioned, he took that program over and he did a tremendous job, and I think he was there as head coach probably 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, 10 years actually.
10 years, yeah.
Cross country, yeah.
Right, and he kept it going. He did a great job over there.
He did, and he had to contend with declining enrollment, being in the SCC, which was just great. The Housatonic League was tough enough. But in my last year, we joined the SCC, and all of a sudden, the state powers like Xavier, and we have Hamden, and all the big schools. Amity from the Hoosie and Cheshire. I mean, that was bad enough, and then you throw in these other teams. It was crazy. But Matt did a good job. He coached some of the best runners that Derby's ever had, and Jeff Rajanelowitz. Anna Polanski, Ryan Tiernan. So, no, kudos to him. I coached him when he was running for Derby, and then he took over. So it was great to have somebody like that continue the program.
Right. Now, Nick, you had mentioned that they didn't have the cross-country team when you got the indoor track job right away. When did it first return? Was it 2012, 2013, the cross-country
Yeah, it was
program?
Gabby's sophomore year.
Right.
Gabby Priggio's sophomore year. And, Mike was there. It's funny. It seems like it's so long ago. But my first year in indoor, Mike, you were working on your master's, I think. And Mike would come over and help out. He saw I was by myself, and he would try and help out as much as he could when he could. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but we'd have these conversations where I'm like, it'd be nice if you come over more, make you an assistant, more, try and push for that. But Mike was early on, I think, intent on having a middle school focus, which is you got to know what your bread and butter is as a coach. And I think he was in the building, which, most coaches are more effective if they're in the building because they have that contact with the kids where they form a better relationship and such. But cross country was not even a thought for the school because it had been eliminated. They had declining numbers. And every season we have to turn in an end of season report. And I'd always put that in there, that as the indoor and outdoor teams were getting better, and the first year was rough, the second year we actually kind of struck gold in a couple different areas, and the progression was very fast with the outdoor track team. I mean, it went from close to nothing to something pretty decent very quick. But I kept noting that in my reports that we needed a cross-country program because there were kids that, not that kids needed to run all year round. I mean, look, if you're a long-distance runner and you know that's what you want to do, cross-country, indoor track and outdoor track, it's for you. If you know that's what you want to be and that's what you want to do.
Right.
But, I've always advocated for kids to follow their hearts, do what they want to do. I have kids that they do one season. I have kids that do 3. I have kids that do 2 seasons. But I know that lack of a cross-country team was hurting us. When indoor would start and our distance runners had a difficult time, keeping up with the work on their own. So I had a couple kids that were competing as like a team of one. They ride the bus with Seymour. I go to the meets. I wasn't a coach, but I go to the meets and watch. But around, I want to say 2012, 2013 is when, the middle school numbers were actually what made it so we can start the cross-country team again. Because I kept having to reference that. I'd always ask, what do you think you have for numbers? He'd tell me, Mike would tell me. And that and the track success gave us the steam to have the cross-country team started again. So, I mean, look, there's no doubt in my mind if we didn't have Mike and the running club doing what they were doing and the middle school cross-country team, we never would have had, or at least it would take a lot longer to get a middle school or high school cross-country team.
And it's very important that you both work together, because if you're just focused on the middle school team and you're just focused on the high school team and you're not really communicating with each other, it kind of hurts in the end, because you want to be able to give him some insight onto what he has going forward. And, you want to be able to know what kind of kids you're going to have down the road. So it's good that you two kind of work together and there's no egos or anything like that. You both just want to do what's best for the program.
It's kind of like we've done a lot of informal collaboration where I know times we've met in your room. I know times we've met outside my car. We do we have more meetings in the parking lot. And it's more like, how's it going? What you got? What's their mileage like? Because early on, I think with the first couple runners, I don't think I was as good at reaching out to Mike and saying, what's this person's mileage per week, so I had a better idea, and I realized I needed to do that because I was very ambitious with the kids coming up, because I was seeing with the girls specifically, girls can be more successful as underclassmen. Boys need more time to develop. So I saw right away with cross country that some of these girls that were coming up that had been running for 2 or 3 years for Mike had a chance to compete at a pretty high level right off the bat. And with Gabby Prizio, I know she had an injury right before she came up, her calf injury or something, and then she played softball, I think, 8th grade. I didn't really know where she was at when she came up. And I remember saying, the next group that comes up, I'm going to start meeting with Mike and just getting a ballpark figure of mileage. And I thought it was good. I mean, we've never had arguments. I think we both want the same thing. We want the kids to do well. And we want to see more resources. We want to see them get recognized for what they're doing. And we want to see the programs here long after we're gone.
Right. And Mike, I know spring and summer especially, you also offer that program to younger kids as well, to come up to the river walk in Derby, and I think that's like Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday you do it, and it's like 5 to 6 every those days. Talk about just, you know, giving your time up for those kids, and you get great participation. And one thing I noticed too is you push them, but you don't push them too much. If they're not having a good day, you just tell them to run a little bit as opposed to running the whole walk. Talk about that river walk and how that's been good for the kids.
Well, running's supposed to be fun.
Right.
And, you know, if you get a kid that says, hey, you know, coach, I just don't feel well today, well, you know, you could sit down if you don't feel well, or do you only want to run a mile? And, you know, you give them an option. And, I mean, I don't want a kid to run at the early stages. You know, we're not talking high school, we're not talking college, we're talking at the early stages, the 4th and 5th graders. You want them to see that it's fun, and then at the same time, as their times improve, then it gets to be fun. And then as their times improve more and they start to win, they're like, yeah, you know, I get a medal, I get a trophy. Because let's face it, kids like to belong to something. And they like to belong to something that they win. And they've been winning. And as you know, we got a couple of 4th graders here that have been winning recently that Jenny Ames has sent to me.
Yeah, and one of those girls especially, I believe, Cassie Silkoff, I mean, she looks like she's a future state champion. I mean, if everything breaks right for her, I mean, she's won a couple of those meets, am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct.
And then you got Emma Hyder, I mean, I always look at her and I think of Rudy, because she kind of reminds me of Rudy, because she'll be out there every day, and maybe she doesn't come off as the most talented, but she wants it bad. You know, you can see it every day.
Her distance base, her foundation is solid. That girl has several months of solid distance under her. So, you know, when we start kicking in that speed, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, her times drop even further than they are.
She'll probably end up, and I don't know for sure, but just observing from the outside, she'll probably end up, when she gets to the high school, she'll probably have the greatest distance base of any runner that's ever come up.
Which is key, and that's why that program is, you know, so awesome that you do. Now, Joe, you would come to meets here and there. Like, you never fully walked away from cross country, you just haven't been able to coach. But in the last 5 years, you've made your way back where you're at every meet, and you're also a part of that booster club that you guys started, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But when did you decide that you were going to come back and try to offer your hand in some capacity?
Again, it was never intentional. Like, going back, I think what happened was I had been following the progress of the team. First of all, seeing that there was a team again, which was a good sign. And then in 2014, that sort of reading where the team was going and the success that they were having. And I was looking at it and I said, gee, you know, they could be competitive in Class S this year. So right towards the end of the season, before the state meet, I remember emailing Nick and saying, hey, you know, congratulations on a great season, and I see, you know, you can be competitive in Class S and so forth. And I got quite a lengthy response in terms of the analysis of how the Class S meet was going. I'm like, oh, okay, this guy gets it. You know, that was a good sign. And so I looked for that. And it was at that point I said, you know, let me go up, and you know, we weren't sure how they were going to do that day, but I knew it would probably be well. Up until that point, Mike, the best that the team had ever done was 5th in Class S. And I wanted to be there because it was pretty sure that they were going to be able to break that team record. And there was a chance even at a state championship. So that's kind of how it started. And then
now you're a regular.
And now, yeah, you know, it's hard to break away. I mean, and you know, and you follow the kids, and you see how well they're doing and their progression, and it kind of brings back a lot of memories of how that happened. And they're great kids. There are a lot of similarities to the kids I coached. And I was blessed with some great great kids with a work ethic that was second to none, the dedication and drive, and I see a lot of those same qualities in the kids now. So that's kind of how it started.
Right. Now, Nick, was it 2014 that the girls won the MVL title, I believe, or
No. So we won 15, 16, and 17. 14 was a really interesting year. It was kind of like the year I've been waiting for. Mike, I've been watching the three girls that were on Mike's team kind of progress. Sarah Gherkins and Nicole Rizzo and Rachel Fleischer. They were all freshmen that year. And I remember looking at our team. Gabby Prizio was I think a junior.
Right.
No, she wasn't. She was a senior.
No,
No,
junior.
she was junior. I'm trying to
Right.
get my years mixed up. Kylie was a sophomore.
Right.
And that's right. The year before, as a sophomore, Gabby had won the MVL individual title. Kind
Right.
of shocked everybody. It was really awesome. And so going into that season, I was like, got a shot to win the MVL, and I thought we had a really good shot at the top three in the class. First meet of the year, Sarah got a concussion, which was like she slipped on some asphalt in a race, smacked her head on a curb, finished the race, bloodied up. It was interesting. So she was out almost the entire year. Gabby had been battling some injuries, and we went to the MVL meet. It was a relatively strong league that year. Oxford was very good. Woodland and Watertown were good, and I want to say we got fourth. Like, we did not, as a team, do very well. And what ended up happening was, when the meet was over, Kylie had an asthma attack in the middle of the meet. Gabby didn't finish well. It was the only person that really ran well that day was Nicole. She finished all MVL. And after the meet, no one was happy. I mean, I was miserable. Joe has seen me. I'm very intense at these meets. I'm intense with the kids, I think in a positive way, where it's like, you pour so much into all this. There's a lot that goes into getting them mentally ready to compete at a high level and to buy into everything that we're doing. And that meet was a big disappointment. But I remember on the way home telling the girls, I said, listen, in 10 days we're going to race at the state meet and we have a chance to win. And they're looking at me like, we just came in fourth at the MVL meet. I said, look, we're going to have a better day.
Right.
And the best part is nobody thinks we have a chance. That's the best part. So there's going to be no pressure. You're going to go in there and you're going to have a big day. And we did. We came in second.
Right.
I think that one got away. I think we could have won the meet, but we finally had the whole team relatively healthy. And we went out and raced to runner up. So it was pretty cool. Joe was there for it.
Yeah, and I remember that well. The announcer was listing the teams that would be the likely strong teams in Class S that would have a shot at the title. And they were going down team after team after team. No mention of Derby at all. I think he must have rattled off about 8 or 10 teams. And I'm standing there, I'm thinking, they have no idea,
Right.
And but yeah, it was close, and in fact, yeah, it was even closer. I think, in retrospect, we had a real shot that day. But it was still an amazing accomplishment. And I remember, Nick, you might remember this right after the race. I mean, the girls were a little down. I mean,
Yeah.
And I remember going over and talking to them and trying to boost them up a little bit and say, hey, this is the best the team has ever done in the state meet. And then it would be the start of several good years, really.
Well, and in terms of what Mike has done, if you think about that group of freshmen and the girls that were involved, and I say this all the time, without the running club, the cross-country team wouldn't, especially with the girls, wouldn't be developing the way it has, because they're coming up with experience.
Right.
They've been at the middle school states, they've been in road races, they've got a good coach, they've got a distance base, and when they get to me, they're ready to train pretty hard. And that group on the way home from states that year, you know, I remember talking to Nicole specifically, like, look, you're a freshman. We're gonna have 4 years where every year we come to this meet, we're gonna have a chance to win it. We might not win it every year, but we're gonna have a chance.
Right.
And the following year was when we won our first MVL meet, and then we actually had a better state championship meet in 15. We just ran up against a team that was just dominant, immaculate, was so good.
Right.
We were runner-up again in 15, and then it was 2016 that we were able to kind of finally break through and win that, win the state. But yeah, this group of seniors, I just told them today, those 3 girls, we had just finished warm-up, and Sarah and Nicole and Rachel, I said, what am I going to do next year? You guys aren't going to be here. And Sarah goes, quit, right? I'm like, no, I'm probably not going to quit. But she goes, well, what are you going to do without us? I'm like, I really don't know. I mean, it's going to be such a successful group of girls in many different ways.
Yeah.
You know, you talked about in 15 they won the MVL title, which was huge because Derby had a title in cross country, which, you know, they had never really had. Now 2016 comes, and I remember, you know, standing by the fence with Jen Moffitt, and you told us, you said, you know, we really should win states this year. This was 2016, and I could tell the way you said it was, if we didn't, it was going to be a disappointment. So tell me what that was like for you that season. I mean, obviously they won the state title. It was great, but I mean, did you go through that whole year like putting a lot of pressure on yourself because you felt like they should win it that year?
The pressure started in 2014 with that team because I told myself, like, look, we need to. It's difficult. When kids get to high school, there's so many different factors at play. Kids mature, you know, mentally and physically. They lose interest in sports sometimes because social factors, they get jobs. There's so many things going on. And I make them run a lot. And I was concerned that I might push some of the kids too hard because that happens. You know? The focus is development, but it's also achievement. So we wanted to do big and great things, and I was concerned early on. But going into that year, 2016, that summer, there's a lot of pressure on me as a coach because I knew that our girls cross country team should win, and I was feeling the same thing for the boys track team. And I'm sitting there. Before the year got started, I said, there's a chance we could win 3 or 4 MVL championships, 3 state championships in 1 year, and then there's also a chance we might not win any of them.
Right.
And preparing to deal with that, I mean, look, it's this high school sports, but there's a lot of investment made. You know, like these kids, in particular, their parents, you know, allowing you to be with them so much and to speak so much into them, you know, everyone expects, you know, a payout. Right. So I felt going into 2016, I was like, well, it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is. We got to win something. And I would have felt disappointed as a coach if we didn't win 2 state championships that year. Right. And that was the expectation going in. And as a coach, I had to carry myself that way, not in a way that was conceited or proud. It was just, we're good enough to win, and you need to know that.
Right. So let me ask you, you know, it's a great Saturday afternoon, and I believe the weather wasn't great that day, but you win the state title. All that pressure you put on yourself, were you able to enjoy it, or was it more relief that you accomplished it?
I mean, we were very happy. Yeah. Right. I remember getting texts from Mike. I remember lots of people from town who, it's funny, all these numbers were coming up. I had no idea. I don't know how my number got out there, but people were texting me, and it was really cool. I just remember that night we had like a get-together at one of the parents' house afterwards. And I just remember saying to one of the parents, well, this is nice. Now we got to do it again. And
so right away you put the pressure on.
One of the parents was like, seriously? Like, I said, I mean, we're not going to be that team that brags about that one championship season and then that's it. Because there's danger in that.
Right.
letting down, or letting up, so it pretty shortly thereafter with the girls cross country team, the focus is now, it's a norm. The expectation going into every season is that we're competitive to win the league every season. And we're never going to let up on that because we have a good enough feeder program that should always be a possibility. Doesn't mean we're going to win it every year, but we should always be in contention to win with what the middle school is helping to produce.
Right.
It's, now when we go to states, it's not just about winning the class meet. We want to be competitive at that open level.
Right.
With it's not just with cross country; it's with track now too. We have really high aspirations for the track team now, specifically on the boys' side, where it's looked at as an individual sport, but we approach it from a team aspect. And the goal is not, winning the league is great. We want to win the league every year. We want to be competitive. We want to win the class every year. But the goal, once you've done that, you have to look ahead.
Right.
Not that you look too far ahead, but it's the way I look at sports is once you achieve a certain level, then you have to look to the next level.
Right.
Otherwise, you're going to become complacent.
Right. So, Mike, let me ask you, you worked with so many of these kids. How gratifying was it for you to see them become state champions?
Well, that was big. That was a big day in my life because I said, you know what? I got these guys on the right path, I guess you could call it.
Right.
And even the people that weren't part of the team had helped along, like Gabby, who was already past that.
Right.
Her presence had helped. K-Rod was a member then too.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe she was a senior.
But
right.
that was a big day for me too.
Right. Now, Joe, let me ask you. 1987 is when it all started. You put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that. How gratifying was it for you to see them become state champions?
It was, and it even goes further than that, Mike. It was certainly, the girls program started in '87, like you said, but this was the first state championship, boys or girls, that cross country had ever won. So for me, it was like, okay, finally, the mission has been completed. And it was a great feeling. And these girls were very easy to root for because they worked so hard.
Right.
They were so dedicated. They wanted it. And there's a whole story, and we could probably do a whole program on what happened in that 2016 season that gave poor Nick ulcers, I think, that, what should have been pretty easy, and then there were things that always happen in the season with injuries and illnesses. But it was a great moment, and more than that, when we had the team banquet, the championship banquet afterward,
which was a great banquet. Yeah.
It was great, and what really moved me a lot, in addition to having the team win, was that 4 of the original 7 girls on the first cross country team in Derby were there, and a 5th girl did a video clip, Sharon. Yeah. So Lauren Anicelli and Heather Kovacs, Kelly Byram, Sherry St. Jakes, they were there. And they were very proud of what had happened as well. That they were part of history and that the team finally had won the championship. And so it was just a great moment. Absolutely.
Right. Then to follow that up, in the spring, the track team, the boys, win the state title, first one since '76, I believe. So, you're talking 30 years, or 40 years, I should say. Nick, never mind that state championship team, but I look at some of the players on that team, and I think that running really helped them, and it's going to help them later on in life achieve great things. And I think of Kenny Little. I think of Stephen Stanley. I also think of Brian Jalowick, because Brian Jalowick, for as long as I knew him as a kid, he loved baseball. Next thing you know, he could see that he could throw a jab, and he's out there all the time, and he's winning state titles. How gratifying is it just to see, individuals like that do great things?
Well, it's funny. I love cross country. I say I love them all, but track, there's something about track that's very strategic, and it takes a lot of effort to have a good track team. Normally good track teams have 50 or 60 kids on it, where you can really divide and conquer, and we have good numbers, but putting the team together, last year's team, I saw it coming for about 2 to 3 years. You know, when kids are juniors, by the time they're juniors, if they haven't joined the team already, the juniors and seniors have their missions. Like, they know what they're going to be doing their last 2 years. They know what their role is going to be. The freshmen that are on the team, they're like the boys, for the boys. It's exploratory mode, where they're going to be good, and I'm looking at my roster saying, all right, these are the holes we have to fill in 2 years. So which kid has the most potential in this spot? Right. I'm going to train him as a freshman and sophomore, and I'm going to tell them, you're not going to be very good for the boys your first 2 years. You're going to be okay. There's a rare exception where you have a freshman or sophomore boy, but if you look at the difference between a freshman boy and a senior boy, you can't compare them. I mean, they're physically, freshman boys rarely can compete. It happens, but very rare. So the team last year, they were built to win, like specifically plugged in different spots. It was amazing because, and I helped put it there, but they really competed with a chip on their shoulder. They wanted to go out winners. It was intentional. Right. It was very intentional. You know, and that's why, you know, you mentioned the Booster Club, but having agencies and groups that help us to get our kids where they need to go. The group of seniors from last year's championship track team, boys track team, most of them went to nationals the year before. And that was huge. They got to go compete next to, one of the girls was in the Olympics a month later, right? They get to compete with Olympians, future Olympians, the best in the whole country, and they're there. And it does a couple things. One, I want to get them there by the time they're juniors, because it makes them really hungry to get back. Like, once you compete at a certain level, you want to get back there. But two, when they got back to Connecticut, these meets didn't seem that big anymore. And they saw like a bigger, like what they thought was good really wasn't good anymore. Right. Including themselves. Like, you know, some of the kids, their egos shrunk a little bit when they saw how good some of the athletes were down there. And it was so gratifying to win, especially, you know, seeing how much work the kids put in. And you mentioned kids like Ken and Steven and Brian. I mean, they're all seniors this year. We have a really good team this year. And, you know, seeing them come back, it's amazing. Right. So, you know, we talked about this Booster Club a little bit. And that's the thing that, you know, it's not just going to practice every day, putting a workout in front of the kids. You have to do little things on the side to keep this program going. And you guys started a Booster Club, I believe, in February of 2017. So talk about that briefly, Muzz. What was that?
Yeah, I mean, and it really was, I mean, Rod Heider was really the impetus for getting that started. And he and Tara have done a tremendous job in fundraising. It's primarily a fundraising Booster Club, you know, trying to raise money for some things. They've done a great job. Lucia Hannock is part of that as well. So it's been great. You know, having a Booster Club, I think, is important because you can do some things that in tight budget situations you're just not able to do. So you can get some things and get some things done, which is important. But no, it's been great. Right. And Mike, you're a part of that as well. And I mean, it just goes to show that, like, you really have a love for not just the running program, but for these kids. And I mean, that to me would probably be the most rewarding thing to you, correct?
Yes.
Right. And Nick, do you plan on getting more members into this club, or are you content with the committee you have right now, or are you looking to expand it eventually?
I don't know. I mean, you know, it's one of those things where it's still kind of in its infancy, so we're going to have to figure that out. But it's primarily, you know, we want as many ideas as we can get on how we could do things to kind of bolster support for our kids. Right. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we want our kids to have the means to do what we want them to do. And, you know, we don't expect the school district to pour all of its resources into just our program. You know, money's tight. So we want there to be equity. But we also understand that us asking for more than others makes us look bad. So having a Booster Club to help finance some of the things that we want to do that are kind of above and beyond the normal budget is awesome, because then we don't really ever have to tell our kids, no, we can't do that, or we rarely have to tell them that. So it's good to have that that level of support.
Right. Mike, when you look back and this all ends for you, someday, you'll retire from teaching, you'll retire from coaching. What's the thing that you would like to be remembered the most for? If there was one thing that would stand out that you would like to be remembered for?
Just making a difference in people's lives in general.
Right.
That would be it.
Right.
That I made a difference.
Right. Joe, what would be the thing you'd like to be most remembered for, the 10-mile repeat?
No. I think we could skip that. No, I think, a few things. I mean, certainly, on one level, the teams that we had in 89 and 90 that we've talked about before, coming in 5th in New Haven County, 5th in Class S, all of that. At a little higher level, I think being able to help the kids accomplish things that maybe they never thought possible and to be the best they can be. And then one step further, Mike, I would say just having them come back and if cross country and track help them in their lives in some way, in the bigger picture. I mean, that's really what it's all about. It's sort of a means to an end, and that would certainly be it for me. Yeah.
Right. Nick, what would be the one thing that, you never mind be remembered for, but that will stand out for you in your coaching career? What would be the one thing that, you'll look back and you'll say, that was the thing that mattered the most?
Well, I mean, just like Mike and Joe said, making a difference is really important. Knowing that you had a positive impact on people's lives, that's important. I think a message I try and get across to the kids is don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't do something. If I had $1 for every time someone told me that we wouldn't be able to do something that we've done, I'd have a lot of money. I mean, a lot of people have told us that we won't, we can't, too small, we don't have a track, we don't have the staff, we don't have the equipment. And I want kids to understand that, and the kids, I think the kids unrightfully so sometimes feel that because they're from a small town, maybe they can't accomplish the big things that maybe kids in other places can. But I think we're starting to prove that, and we want them to understand that you could be from a small town and do big things. I mean, we have small town people in big places right now, and we have some very talented kids in these programs that are going to go and compete at very high levels and are competing at high levels right now. And Derby never held them back like that. So use the size of our town to your advantage. You get closer to your coaches. You can get more support. Like a program in a smaller town that is successful can get support from a lot of people, right? It doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And I think that's important. That besides everything else that you guys said, it's don't let anyone else's opinion of you or where you come from, define what's possible. Right.
So let me ask you, 8 years from now, will your son be running for you, yes or no?
Well, I mean, he already started over the summer running with the running club a little bit.
Right.
It's funny. I mean, I remember the first time I brought him over to, it was I think in August or July. So my daughter, I don't push them at all into running, because I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that guy who's yelling at his kids and trying to make them into the next Olympian, force them. So my daughter isn't really interested in it, but we brought my daughter, who's 7, and my son, who at the time was 4, to the Greenway, and my daughter didn't want a whole lot to do with it. I took him for 1.25 miles. My son ran the whole thing. And he's like, that was pretty easy. I want to come back and do it again. He goes, next time I want to do the run that the other kids did. They ran, 3.5 miles, the older kids. So I'm like, no, Nico, we're going to do 1.5 miles next time. So we come back again, did 1.5 miles. Can I do the big one? No, you can't. So we built up. Nico got to 4 miles this summer.
Wow, that's impressive.
And did a couple races. I don't know if he'll be running for Derby.
He'll be running for somebody.
We don't live in Derby per se, but I hope my kids appreciate running and what it can do for you, just mentally and physically. Maybe.
Right.
Maybe we'll get them in district somehow. See.
Right. Well, guys, it's hard to believe that time ran out this quick, but I really want to thank you three for coming on. To me, what you've done with this program in the last, 30 some odd years has been tremendous. I mean, you've done it over the last 30 for sure, the last 10 for you two. And I think the way the program is right now is a credit to you guys as well as the people behind the scenes and especially these kids. So thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
So there you have it, folks. These three men came from different backgrounds, yet they were similar in so many ways. Joe Mazzanti left high school after the 1982 season, but his love for running never died. He would come back and coach for 7 years with the Derby Girls and Derby Boys cross-country program. Years later, he'd be forced to leave due to his job, but his love for Derby and his love for that program never stopped. He returned in 2014, and he's been there ever since. He's involved with the Booster Club, and you can find him at every meet. That's because Joe Mazzanti loves Derby, and he loves that running program. Mike Gazzo may not have been from Derby, but his heart is red and white. He's there every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, giving his time to those kids so they could go on the river walk. And never mind what he does with the middle school. It's been remarkable. Without that running program, these state championships that the Derby girls and boys have won would not be possible. And Nick DeLugo, a man who came from Naugatuck. Naugatuck was a successful running program for many years. Nick came to Derby, and what he's done with this program, bringing it back after being away for 3 or 4 years and making it a contender every year and now a state champion, is very remarkable. Is Nick DeLugo someone Derby needs? Most definitely. Without these three men, Derby would not be where it is today with the running program. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Kenichi saying goodbye, everyone.